Well, timing is everything. So I released the first in this series for absolute beginners, showing you the download and how to run FreeCAD for the first time, create a sketch, and produce a model. Of course, on the same day that I released that video, FreeCAD released version 0.19.1 as the stable release. So I'm going to show you how to download that. So all we need to do is to go to www.freecadweb.org and we're going to say download now, and we're just going to download the version that we want. So I want the 64-bit window version, and I'm going to save this file, and it's an installer, so I'm going to save that and I'm going to actually install the latest version of FreeCAD. Now, you can install the app image for Linux, and I do have one of my subscribers has said that the PPA version for Ubuntu is actually easier to use. It's entirely up to you if you want to do the app image or you want to do the PPA version. You can certainly check that out. Just want to check this FreeCAD release page, see what the new release is. Yeah, there's no development release at the moment, so it has just become the stable version. How exciting. So after downloading the FreeCAD stable release, I'm just running it. I'm going to see if it actually replaces the stable release that I have installed. Here we go. So it's 0.19.1. It's the FreeCAD license. I'm going to accept everything there. And I'm going to install for anyone using this computer. And I'm going to put it in that FreeCAD 0.19 file. And I'm going to allow it to associate everything with FreeCAD with this guy. I'm going to create a shortcut. I'm just going to allow it to install. So it doesn't look like it has to uninstall the other version that I have installed. I've been using the development versions for a long time, and those you just click on the executable. So they are pretty much standalone. I'm going to clean up now and get rid of all my development versions and use this stable version from now forwards. Okay, so let's run FreeCAD 0.19.1, the stable release for the first time. And let's see what we get. As far as the startup is concerned, that's a new splash screen that they've created for this version. But I expect the interface should look exactly the same as I have been using, as I've been using the development version right up to this point. So I was on pretty much the latest development version. So there is the interface, and with mine, it starts up directly in part design. Yours may start up in that start screen that we talked about in the last video. So if yours starts off in a screen that looks similar to the one I'm about to show you, then to follow along, so here's what you may be seeing, something like this. To follow along, just go to Start and select Part Design. So we'll just select Part Design here. And today in this video, we're going to cover creating a sketch. And we're going to create that sketch from a rough sketch I made on a pad that shows the dimensions. So here's the rough sketch that I made, and that will show you the dimensions that we want to create. So here in Part Design, I'm going to start a new file, and I'm going to save that file. First thing to do is save the file. So I'm going to save that file, and I'm going to save it as second file because I already saved the first file. Looks like my assembly 2 workbench is causing an error. I have assembly 2 installed and apparently it can't find an icon, so I'm going to ignore that error. So now I've created a part or a file. I'm going to create a part in that file, so I'm going to use this create a new part and make it active. Then I'm going to create a body and make that active. And now we're ready to create a sketch. If we go to our tasks over here, so this is a tabbed interface, tasks, the next task on here, create a sketch. I can click this one, or I can go here and create a sketch. Now, one thing to note is when you create a sketch, FreeCAD will automatically switch this part design to the Sketcher workbench. So let me show you that. Here's a sketch. I'm going to pick it on the XY plane. Now you've got two options here. You can, if I just rotate this around, all I'm doing is pressing my middle mouse. That lets me rotate it around a little bit like that. I can select the XY plane from here. So if I select that plane, you see it selected it over there. So I can select that plane. So if I wanted to do it in a different plane, it's easy for me to see this plane or this plane, but I know I want it in the XY plane. So I can also select it from here, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm select the XY plane, and I'm going to say OK. When I do that, as I said, it switched us into the Sketcher workbench. The Sketcher workbench has all these tools in it. So these are the tools that you need for sketching. And what you should see is the center point of your drawing space. So I tend to use that as the center of everything. So I use that as the center point. You can use it as the bottom left point, the top right point, whatever you want to do. I tend to use it as the center point. Now, if you want to scroll in, or sorry, zoom in, zoom out, it's just the scroll wheel, the middle wheel. I'm just scrolling that up and scrolling it down. If I want to move it over, because I want this center point to be up here somewhere, I press Shift, click that center, and it allows me to move it. So it's a good idea to get used to that, because sometimes your drawing is over here in the corner, and you actually want it in the middle, and you want to be able to shift around in it. So zoom out with the scroll wheel, hold down Shift, click the scroll wheel, move it around to where you want it, and then zoom in. Now, looking at my picture, I have a fish shape. I'm going to call it a fish that I drew. It's an arbitrary part I drew just for some interest, and I wanted to show you how I would go about sketching this part. Now, I drew it three-dimensionally. I sketched it three-dimensionally because that's typically what I do when I'm designing or creating a part. I'll sketch it three-dimensionally so I can see what it is I'm actually creating. But of course, you're going to draw the 2D outline. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select our polyline tool, and we're going to create that shape. Now, I'm not going to worry about the dimensions right now. I'm just going to create the shape, something that looks like it. So I'm going to click on this polyline. I'm going to pick a line. I know it goes this way. I know it goes here. I know there's a piece that goes out here, down here, back here, down, across, down, all the way back to here, up to here, out here, up here, down here, and back to that line there. And then I also know I have a square somewhere here. So that's the rough shape. I didn't look at any dimensions. I just went with a rough shape. Now what I like to do is I like to start the constraining of my sketch using geometry first. So by that I mean things that are horizontal or vertical or at a certain angle or attached to certain lines. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are dimensioning the important parts. When we start dimensioning, we want the important parts dimensioned, and so we're going to use the sketch as a guide because I've dimensioned the parts that I want to be a certain size, and then we'll allow the other pieces to be the size that they are from a calculation standpoint. Now, one thing I wanted to show you, if we zoom in here a little bit, you can see these constraints. This constraint is saying this line has to be vertical. So if I try to move it, you see the line moves vertically. It won't allow me to shift those points in different places. They're vertical, so they have to remain vertical. Whereas this line here, you can see it didn't get a constraint for horizontal. So this line got a constraint for horizontal. So if I move that line, it's going to move the whole line. If I move this one, I can shift the points around because it's not horizontal. But on our sketch, it should be horizontal. So I'm going to touch that line. I go up here to the horizontal constraint. I click that. And now this line will move as a solid line because it is horizontal. Equally, this line and this line don't have those horizontal or vertical constraints. So this one should have a vertical constraint. And this one should have a horizontal constraint. And you see it automatically forces them to be horizontal or vertical, depending on what we pick. So those are all the simple ones. And I can see from my sketch that this should be up here somewhere. So it doesn't really matter where it is right now. It's where it's going to be when we finish up. So again, from an alignment standpoint, one of the things I notice is that this line and this line, they should be aligned. So I'm going to select that point, and I'm going to put a vertical constraint. And now those 2 points, those lines are actually aligned. So it's going to keep them in sync. And then this guy and this guy are supposed to be in line. So again, I select a point, select the second point, and say vertical. And now those are going to be in line. So we've got some sloppiness. We can move this around in certain places, but we're starting to get it together. If I look at this one, so this point and this point, they should be aligned. So now we have multiple alignments that are in the right spot, and we can look for things like symmetry or angular alignments, tangential alignments. We can check if our sketch is constrained, if it's sitting together, by moving it like this. If these points were not attached, it would move separately. So you can see all my points are actually attached to each other, so nothing is coming loose, which is a good thing. That's the advantage of using a polyline. Now, if I zoom in on this part here, if you watch this guy, this point, I can't move off this line. And that's because of this constraint here. So there is a constraint. And let me just show you, if we go down here, we can see all the constraints in this model. And if I click on that one, which has that same symbol, which is this constraint here, which is a fixed point onto an object. So this has fixed this point onto the x-axis. That line there is actually the x-axis. It's a little hard to see it with the grid over top of it, but it's actually a red line. And that line has this point affixed to it. So I can highlight that point and say delete. Now I've deleted that constraint. I can take that point and I can move it off that line. So if your points get stuck on a line, it's typically there's a constraint that's holding it there. And so remember that if you want to move it off there, you certainly can do that. Now, what we could do when I look at my sketch is we could make this point and this point symmetrical around the x-axis, if that made sense. But in fact, I think my point might be better, or my symmetry might be better somewhere further up from the dimensions that we have. So let's take a look at setting up other geometry here. We have, these are angles. They should be the same. So I can click that line, and tell them that they are equal. And now those lines are the same. So if I change things, those lines should change in the same manner. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up a center line between here and here, or we can move the whole model down so that it all centers here. And to do that, we have to be a little bit careful that we don't cause symmetry here to pull everything down and destroy our geometry. If it turns the geometry inside out, then you're basically going to end up redoing your geometry. So the best thing to do would be to pull down my geometry and get it roughly where I want it in terms of being symmetrical around those points. And then I can say this point and this point around this line are going to be symmetrical. Then I can say this point and this point around this line are going to be symmetrical. And then I can move this down to somewhere close. I have this symmetrical and I have this part symmetrical. I could make symmetry this way around that center line, so that might work. I'll do that and that. Click that point. Symmetry. So now I have a symmetrical box that is around this line. And we'll just move those down because they don't want to be up there. They're going to be down here somewhere, I do believe. And we have the shape constrained from a geometry standpoint. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start adding some dimensions. So we're going to do a horizontal dimension. We're going to tell it this piece here, and we know that needs to be 80. So I'm going to make it 80. Now remember, I made this and this symmetrical to this line, so it opens up equally across that line. I also know that this should be 50, as that is what I had selected. So if I make that 50, and I also have a dimension, a horizontal dimension between here and here of 20. And remember now, this is symmetrical, so it's going to open up symmetrically. This part here is held because these two lines are equal, so it won't go up and down. It will go in and out though. So we will need to apply a horizontal dimension between here and here of 20. And now you can see that this has changed color, and it changes color because it's basically this feature is constrained. Constrained means if I try and move it, it shouldn't move anymore. It now knows where it lives in relation to a fixed point. One other thing I should show you is if you highlight these dimensions, so if I just scroll over it, I just roll my mouse over top of this till it turns yellow, I click it, then I can move it. And you can move these dimensions around. This is not a technical drawing, so it doesn't really matter where they are. It's so that you can see them and that you can read the dimensions. So again, it's a good idea to keep the dimensions tidy. So as far as other dimensions are concerned, I can do a horizontal dimension this way. I know that should be 40. And I'm going to just grab this line here. Get to the line underneath. I just wanted to grab the line so it didn't get ridiculously thin. And I know that the dimension between here and here, do a vertical dimension there, that should be 80 as well. And I'm going to scroll that back there. So I've started to constrain the shape, and I have a dimension for this horizontal piece. It should be 30. And remember, these are vertically constrained, so it's gonna move both of them together because of that vertical constraint that we built in there. So I'm just going to move this dimension up to here, just so it's neat. When you zoom in and out, the dimensions all get messed up anyway, so don't spend too much time placing your dimensions. And then I know this guy from my sketch again is 10. Let's bring that one out here. And I know from my sketch again that this guy here is also 10. Oh, that's not true. It is actually 20. So I'll show you how you edit a dimension. So you highlight it till it's yellow, double click it, and then I can change it to what I need it to be. So it is 20. And then if I go to the top here, it tells me how many degrees of freedom there are in this sketch. So if I look at this outside shape, I'm just going to click on this line and try and move it. I can tell that this sketch is constrained except for this guy that's still in white in the middle. So first thing I need to do is I need to dimension this square, and this square is a 10 by 10 square. So as it's going to be square, I can say this line and this line are equal. And then I can dimension this line as 10 and drop him down there. And because I said this line and this line are equal, and it has vertical and horizontal constraints, that's all you need to lock that square in. The reason it's still free is because it's floating in this area. So I've provided dimensions here from here to here. That's going to be 5. And from here to here with a vertical dimension, that's also going to be 5. And now you saw that the sketch suddenly went green, bright green. That basically means it's fully constrained. It says here it's a fully constrained sketch. That means if I grab this and try and move it, it won't move because everything is constrained. So we've told this sketch how to place these lines in a way that they can't be moved. So it's a fully constrained sketch. If you notice, all I did was go through it methodically, took my time, kept the shape about the shape I wanted, and created that. Now, of course, in my sketch, it's 10 millimeters thick. So we're going to close this sketch, and then we're going to pad the sketch, and it automatically goes to 10 millimeters thick, and we say OK. And now we have a model of that part, fully constrained, that is 10 millimeters thick. Leave a comment below if there's something you want me to cover specifically from a beginner standpoint. Please consider taking a look at our affiliate links below. That helps the channel. I'm going to do a few in the series here. Obviously the sketching and the constraints are something you need to get to grips with. But we're going to do some models next time and show you how to do something so it's not all in a two-dimensional plane and then just extruded. we'll add some features. So thanks for watching. Please like this video, give it a thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. We're expecting to deliver new videos every week, so typically try to get them out on Saturdays.